I cannot explain to you how nice it is coming out to this sitting in the driveway, but we can't forget our roots. We can't forget where we came from. But yeah, this M2 has been an amazing car to drive and own, and today I'm going to go over why I chose this over the 2020 Supra, and I'm also going to do a video actually explaining what it's like driving the ST compared to the M2. Even though they're very different in cost and their setup, rear-wheel drive versus front-wheel drive, I think there's some pretty interesting similarities and some differences that makes one slightly more enjoyable than the other. But today is all about the Supra and why I chose this over the Supra, and I'm not going to be hating on the Supra or anything like that because I absolutely love that car. But if you're on the fence between the two because of how similar they are, I think this video will help you make your decision. So let's go take a drive. Oh, yeah, I just vacuumed it out today. It looks really nice. It's pretty clean on the outside. Manual transmission. You can also get this in a dual clutch, but after renting an M4 or in Maui, if you want to check that video out, click the card at the top of your screen. I just felt that you have to get this car in a manual transmission. I think it would make the M4 more fun, M3, M2, whatever M you're driving that you can get in a manual. I think that's the way to go. Unless you're in traffic every day and you just don't want to be on and off the clutch, I understand that, but yeah. So why did I buy this BMW M2 over the new Toyota Supra? Reason number one is pretty obvious, and that's the manual transmission. Now, this is a secondary car for me, so if it was a primary car, I might have leaned toward the Supra just because of having the car be able to shift for itself, and I think the Supra in an 8-speed automatic is more fun than the dual clutch 7-speed in the M2, which is an option for this car. It's unfortunate the Supra's not offered in a manual, but I also understand why they had to launch it without one. Also, EAG out of Texas is able to put a manual transmission in your Supra. I think it's about $12,000, so it's not cheap. I mean, you could almost get a Focus ST for 12 grand, so I don't know if that's actually worth it.
In 3.6 miles, turn right onto South Earl Road.
So that's reason one, the manual transmission and it being a secondary car. I really wanted to have the full engagement of a sports car. Rear-wheel drive, manual transmission, rear differential, big sport brakes. It's just a perfect setup. Now, the Supra has all of that, but I think the Supra is a softer car in that the suspension is set up slightly not as aggressive. There's just a lot about the Supra that makes it a better all-around car, a better everyday driver than the M2. The M2 is very rigid, but I think on the track they could be equally as fun. And if manual transmission is your selling point, then you have to go with an M2 if you're looking for something that has the rear-wheel drive sports car setup. The second thing that turned me on to the M2 over the Supra is the look. Now, this is a subjective thing. Some people love hatchbacks, some people hate how they look, some people love BMWs, some people hate how they look. So it is subjective, and I understand that. But I personally think that the M2 has a more aggressive look than the Supra. The Supra is more rounded and sleek looking. The M2 is more rigid. You let me know what you think in the comments below about that. I'm interested to hear everyone's opinion on that, because maybe it's 50-50, or maybe I'm totally off, or maybe everyone agrees with me, but I'm interested to see what you think. But that was the next thing, is the look. And also, when I saw it in person, the Supra, I was not really moved by it like I was with the M2. And that was another thing that just if you're going to spend this type of money on a secondary car, you don't want to settle for anything. You want it to be exciting to look at, exciting to drive. You don't want that to wear off in a few months. And so far, I've been so happy with how this car looks, how it drives, and it sounds, and everything on a daily basis. That doesn't mean you can't have the same excitement about the Supra. Just to me, just being able to shift and make the decisions that you want to make, and it's 100% up to you, was a big deal to me. Now the third thing, and that is price. I did get this M2 used. I paid $46,000 for it, and it was also a private sale. So in Arizona, you don't have to pay tax on that. So if you do $46,000, the Supra that I wanted was $56,000 plus taxes. You have to ask yourself, is the Supra $15,000 more exciting than the M2? And to me, the answer was always no. Now, the other side of that is because I make YouTube videos, I make revenue off of YouTube. I am going to make some of that money back, but I'm not making a ton of money. I'll do a video on exactly how much I've made on YouTube for a smaller channel. That way you guys can get an idea of, you know, do you want to create a YouTube channel? Is it worth the time and all that stuff? But it is, you know, was it worth the $15,000 extra dollars? And the answer that I always came to was no. The look of it didn't fully excite me. I didn't like that it wasn't a manual transmission offering, but I also don't like hate the Supra because it's not a manual transmission. It's just my personal need was to have a manual transmission for my secondary car. My Focus ST, which I drive every day, really that should be an automatic transmission. I would love to have a Golf R as a daily driver. The DSG gearbox is so good, and the problem is the ST is already paid off. I don't really want to have another car payment because I have this and my wife's Escape as well, which we need to get rid of that thing. Additionally, on price is there was dealer markup on the Supra. I was able to get a launch edition Supra in red for MSRP from a dealer back in Pennsylvania where I know the owner. He texted me, he said, "It's in, do you want it?" But again, I would have had to ship it across the country, which is about $1,200 to $1,500 from that area in Pennsylvania. And then I would have had to got paint protection film and tint, which is close to $2,000. So all of that expense was adding up, and I was just thinking to myself, the M2 is, you already know it's perfect. It's exactly what you want. What are you waiting for? So I found, by the way, the auto blips on the downshifts are so good. I didn't think I was...
1.8 miles. Turn right into the parking lot.
I didn't think that was going to be something I enjoyed. If you just watch videos on the internet and you're like, oh, that Jason, what's his name? Jason something from Motor Trend. He hates the auto blip feature on the car, and he hates it because you can't automatically turn it off and on. And I get that. You can turn it off when you put it in, when you take traction control totally off, which in this car is actually pretty dangerous. I found out almost the hard way. I'll explain that later. But it is so good, and I wouldn't want to drive without it. It's fun. I know how to rev match downshift. I know how to do that. Heel towing, I would rank myself a 5 out of 10. I can get maybe 1 and 5 perfectly. I just don't practice it often, and I haven't been to the track. So what I'm trying to say is the auto blip features on the downshifts are so nice. It's so effortless. I mean, here, third. Perfect. Going through a yellow light. It just works so incredibly well, and it's actually taught me how to do it better in my Focus ST, just understanding the timing that it uses. So I've actually gotten better at it because of this. The other thing that now, just yesterday, that has come to light is what happens when you buy a first generation car. Now, having one of the first Supras and having the hype and clout, and you drive around and everyone's like, oh, there's a Supra. That's cool for a couple weeks, but then everyone else has one, and it's not as cool, and you paid extra for that. The other issue is they just released the 2021 Supra. It has 385 horsepower and 368 foot-pounds of torque. There's more options. There's now a 4-cylinder option. And imagine paying over MSRP for a Supra, a 2020 Supra, and then the next year they add 50 horsepower. That would suck. Don't quote me on this. I think what they did is added a dual port header compared to a single port, and that's what they're saying they're getting the new power from. I'm not totally convinced that that's all that added 50 horsepower. I think the car was already dynoed at 340 wheel, and it said it made 335. So the fact that it was already making that much power tells me that they just heavily underrated it. That way, when they could do a refresh, it wouldn't cost them a lot to add that extra power. So that's how I think they added the extra power. I think it was really mainly already built into the car. But just knowing that on paper, that your car has 385 and the 2020 has 335, that's going to hurt the value of those 2020 models even more. Even though they've been holding well for now, down the road in a year, a 2-year mark, everyone's going to want a 2021 with the higher power. So that's another thing, is a first generation car, there's always kinks and things that they work out that make you look back and you're like, oh, that looks really good. For example, when I had a Civic Si, I had a 2011. The facelifted version looks so much better than the 2006 version. I think they started the facelift in 2009 for an 8th gen Si. And same thing with my Focus ST. The 13s and 14s looked good. They still look pretty good, but until the 15, when they refreshed the whole outside of the car and the steering wheel, it sucks because you're like, oh my God, it costs the same. Guy just dumped a bunch of dead bodies in the back of that garbage truck. I'm just gonna act like I didn't see it. It costs the same and you're not getting all of these extra features, and that's why it's good. And just with the Supra, waiting just a year is going to get you all these features coming up this summer. And the special edition they launched, I think, is much cooler than the launch edition for the 2020 version. Tell you what, starting this thing up never gets old. Never. The Supra is an amazing car, and the nice thing about it is the aftermarket is insane because it's a Supra. So the aftermarket right now is probably already better than that of the M2, and the M2's been around since 2016. So that's one positive of going with the Supra over the M2. If you're really looking to make a build, there's going to be a huge market for it, and it's only going to continue to grow as they continue to develop the Supra. I also think it was very smart of Toyota to create a 4-cylinder version that's more affordable, and it still has good powers, 255 horsepower and 295 foot-pounds of torque. That's a lot. Second, oh, right into a school zone. God, I make the worst decisions. Overall, either way you go with these cars, you're gonna be driving a very fun car, a car that people are gonna appreciate if they don't know anything about cars. The Supra is definitely a more known name, but anytime you see an M badge, everyone knows what that is as well. So either way you go, it's going to be fine. Really, it's going to come down to, if you absolutely need a manual transmission, your only option is the M2, or spend an insane amount of money to get the Supra swapped. And with it not being engineered for that, I don't know how I feel about that. One thing that I will say, and that I stuck with through my car buying process recently, is get what makes you happy. If I would have bought a Supra, it would have made my YouTube viewers, I think, happier. It's a newer car. They're able to learn about it in a way that I present. I go very in depth on all the cars that I own. I have one car. I go very into depth, and I think people would have appreciated my perspective on the Supra. But at the end of the day, when you're spending close to $60,000 on a car, you really have to buy something that when no one's looking, you are happy with. You can't, I was not gonna sit here and fake YouTube videos and say, oh, I'm so happy, this is such a cool car, because that gets old quick. It really wears on you. And someone did donuts all through that intersection. And that's why, in the end, I chose the M2, because it was a debate with me, like, oh man, this would be great to have for my YouTube channel and grow it. And it's the same regardless if you have a YouTube channel or not. Like, you don't want to buy a Mercedes just to say, oh, I have a Mercedes and it's a GLA. Like, a GLA is a piece of junk. If you know, you're better off saving and getting the car that you actually want. That way it makes you happier years down the road. The worst mistake you can make is buying something to make other people happy when you're paying for it at the end of the day. So stick to your guns. Don't don't bend to make other people happy or get something that you think people will like. Get what makes you happy and stick to that, and that's why I love this M2. Now, the other thing I'm thinking about is once the pricing is finalized on the Supra, I may get that as a daily driver. The biggest dilemma for me is getting rid of my Focus ST, because that's what my channel is built around, and people love to see the videos that I make on the ST. So getting rid of that, probably not a good move for me. But at the end of the day, that's what I have to do to make myself happy, and I'm confident in my ability to make videos and do upgrades and things like that, that I will find an audience regardless. So stick to your guns, buy what you want, but those are the reasons that I chose the M2. I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you're new to the channel, I'm lost, and I'm also new to wherever the hell I'm at. It's a nice neighborhood, though. I'd like to live here. 3-car garages all over. Wow. Gargle. Neighbors already hate me. It's beautiful. But if this is the first video you're seeing of mine, yes, I have a Focus ST and a BMW M2, and I do upgrades mainly on the ST. I have some things coming up. I'm contemplating a lot of things. Do I want to do big brake, suspension? You know, what do I want to do? I'm not totally sure yet. But that's what I do on this channel. I also do car news, car reviews. I go to some auto shows and do some commentating. It's always entertaining. But yeah, I appreciate your support. If you're still with me in the video, drop a like on it. That helps me get these videos promoted and helps grow the channel. So I'd really appreciate that. It's Valentine's Day. Show me some love. Thank you guys, and we'll see you next time. Everything shot out of my pocket and is now in the back seat. I am going to do some videos as well, driving this thing in the canyons with drones, different microphones, so you can really feel what this thing is like and hear it. Yeah, I better go park this before I get arrested.